I came from Birmingham, Alabama. My mom said that I was born grown. If you know Southern people, that means that I was born already asking questions. When I came on the department, we had two badges. One said policewoman, one said policeman. And our board of directors said, why do we have to have two badges? Let's have one badge. Let's have a badge that's gender neutral, and it says police officer. I believed in women's rights back in those days. That's the way it ought to be, huh? In 1969, I started a 27-year career at Cal State University, Los Angeles, teaching in the Department of Criminal Justice because I wanted to come back to Santa Monica as a civilian, and I wanted to run for public office. Here's a picture of a young man who's mayor of the city of Santa Monica, and that time allowed him to still be a man that's respected in City Hall. I have worked here in the community for 6 decades. I had the privilege of giving money to almost 30 nonprofits that I'd worked for, and I was glad to do that. My greatest legacy is a man who cared. Back to my fellow Santa Monicans, my fellow human beings, I absolutely enjoy changing people's lives. But I want to set the stage by taking you on a little mental journey. Now, if you can envision in the 30s, Alabama, Birmingham, Alabama is where I was born. And we lived in a neighborhood in the 30s where white families lived in the same neighborhood in Alabama. And as kids, we could play in the street on the red clay with the kids, but we couldn't go in the house. We couldn't have any interchanges and in this particular neighborhood. I was blessed. My family was blessed. My grandfather was a blacksmith. And by virtue of being a blacksmith, he knew how to weld, and we had copper plumbing pipes, indoor toilets before anybody in the neighborhood. I have to tell this because it's important to frame my personality as an octogenarian. So we leave Alabama and we go, and I think it was 37 or something like that. We go up to a place called Richmond, Indiana. Richmond's now the home of, look, see, Janet's smiling. Richmond is a town, Earlham College's hometown, the Quaker town. Richmond was really, really sort of nice. Now, again, we get in an odd situation. This is when blacks were blacks and whites were whites, and the two of them should never cross, right? We lived had a place in an area where we were the only black family in a residential R1 zone. So I was the only black kid in the school, in the whole school. And we made it through there and we got out. And then I went over, we went over to another school at another grade, and the kids in the neighborhood, the black kids, wanted to go to the drugstore with the best crystal soda glasses in the whole world. When 3 black kids walked in to get a soda in the summer, we got paper. We got paper. And the crystal stayed there just as nice as it could be. I'm just giving you a little example. So we left Richmond and we went to a place in Ohio. And I'm skipping. We lived in a government project. Beautiful. Boy, if we had it in Santa Monica, it'd be fantastic. Everything was nice. They called it the Valley Homes. Brand new World War II stuff. Moved to a town called Glendale, Ohio, which is a suburb of Cincinnati. But Glendale, the distinction there was it was the home of somebody you all know. Can you believe that? You all know this person. He was Proctor of Procter & Gamble. The town was loaded with rich people. Guess where the black people did when they worked in the town, lived in the town? We lived in a place. I lived in an antebellum 3-story house that was built God knows how long ago. I had my own private bedroom as a kid in Ohio, 3 acres on the back of the lot, right? But I was black. Huh? All of the people who were color worked as servants for the rich folks. Okay, don't get confused about this now, because it's very important. My stepdad worked for one of the richest families on the planet, Albert D. Lasker's daughter. Now, if you've ever been to the Louvre in Paris, you'll see Albert D. Lasker's name all over the place because of all the money he gave to him. Well, my stepdad was Brody, who married Albert's daughter, Brody's butler. And so when you're living around all this wealth, plus I'm a stepchild, right? I got to go to Chicago in a brand new Cadillac because my stepdad, I called him dad until he died, was in this world of wealth. Now, I'm telling you this because it means something later on. So we left Glendale in 1949 and loaded up the station wagon. Now, there's some of you old enough, or maybe Joe will know this, in a 1948 Woody Ford, a classic. Okay? How in the hell we're servants? But the fact that wealth was involved made us middle-class people from day one. I hope you can understand what I'm telling you. Middle-class people because of the grandfather's skills, the stepdad's connections. And so we come to California, and this was a storm like they're having in Texas now in 1949. We couldn't get out of the snow till we got to Phoenix, Arizona. Wow. But I have to tell you about one of the stops we had along the way in Mississippi. We had to feed. We had a car full of kids and 2 adults, right? But my stepdad, he looked more like Vance than me. So in Mississippi, you couldn't, blacks had to go to the back door to get food. He walked in the front door, got the food, and a guy was helping him bring the food out to the car so we could put it in. And the guy said, I'm a little kid, I hear this. And he says, what the heck? And I won't get into the church. Do you have these pickaninnies in the car? And that was our family. I'm sharing this because this is Black History Week, okay? So we get on back and we arrive in Santa Monica. And again, I'm glad this is a church. God is good. My first school in Santa Monica was called Lincoln Junior High School because of where we got our first apartment. Now, you don't know how powerful that act of God was, because in that school, all of my friends' parents were the powers shakers of the city of Santa Monica. You know, people who owned everything, people who did this. And then we had segregated beaches here. I found about it real quick. In 1949, I couldn't go to any beach but a beach down there they called the Inkwell, right? It was south of the then Del Mar Club. But guess what? In my class, a nice little young lady, this is ninth grade, her dad owned what? Paradise Cove.
Oh.
And the class had a party on the beach at Paradise Cove in 1949. And if I say this, don't get angry. There was a fly in the buttermilk. His name was Nat Travis, and he was there enjoying himself with his friends. And not one N-word was uttered. Okay? That's true history about Santa Monica. So we leave that Lincoln School and they go over to a school called Santa Monica High School, better known to us locals as Samo High. Oh, what a place. Samo High was, in fact, an island in Santa Monica where kids respected one another regardless of their race, sex, or gender. That's the truth in 1952. And I can tell you a story that's going to shake you up a little bit. Santa Monica High, this is all on Black History Month now. They had dances every year for the king, and they had king and queen of these dances. And here's another name you may know from Santa Monica High School history. The fellow's name was R.C. Owens. R.C. Owens played to the 49ers, and he was an all-time, big-time NFL football player, but he was a Samo High kid. And he became king for this dance. And the queen was a beautiful young white girl. And the football coach who coached RC said, no. You can't have the first dance because we're not going to go for that. It's a football coach. All right, I happen to be a 16-year-old student body president of Santa Monica High School, also known as Samo High. But you heard back when I said my mom said I was born and grown. I said that early on, okay? I've never been shy. I went to the principal's office, and we had a principal named A. Ewing Knoll, brand new principal at Santa Monica High. And Gus Vinker was the vice principal, and Gus Vinker and I were just like that. Because I was working with a student with the Vikes in, and he worked with the kids, and he loved me. And I said to the principal, this is not Samo High. We can't do this. Maybe we don't need to have the dance. And A. Ewing Knoll backed me up. Now, again, God is good. I don't know how anybody here know a guy named George Collins. George was in my the class behind me, I think. We're about the same age. George is a local attorney doing, still working. We're both we're octogenarians. George called me out of the blue a day before yesterday and said, Nat, I was talking to Dr. Knoll's daughter, and guess what? I said, what? She mentioned you, and let me tell you a story. And would you believe how the world connects? She told a story about her dad backing up me, a black kid, in a time where he could have been fired. Now, this is amazing. Do the math. How many years ago was that? Huh? This is absolutely amazing. So I'm sharing those kind of things with you to tell you how my life went forward. Now, Pastor Tim has told me that you folks are curious about a lot more things than that. So you can ask any questions you want. I've got a whole script of stuff we can talk about, but I'm not going to talk the entire hour until I hear from some of your questions, because I know you should have some good questions.
Yeah, if anyone has a question, feel free to raise a hand. Yeah, Laurel.
Yeah, so I mean, just in terms of you've described different living situations in the different cities where you lived. How progressive was Santa Monica compared to other cities or places to live, like in Los Angeles proper, or in the state? I'm just curious how progressive you would say that we were then.
Okay, I'm going to answer her question, but before I answer it, I'm going to give you something that I give to my students. I have a philosophy of the 3 T's. Three T's. Truth plus transparency equals trust. Okay. The question with respect to the 50s, Santa Monica was a segregated town. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I can give you experiences about real estate. Mm-hmm. I can give you experience about restaurants. Mm-hmm. I can give you experiences about this man that's talking to you who went to jail for being with a white girl at the Goody Goody at Berkeley and Wilshire.
Really?
In
Wow.
Santa Monica, not Atlanta, Georgia.
Right.
So that's an answer to your question.
Okay.
Samo High was an island, I'm telling you. 60% of my friends were white at Santa Monica High School. I've got the evidence and the yearbooks and all that to prove it. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Anybody else? All right, let me move on a little bit here because
I was going to ask, what were the demographics of the high school when you attended?
we had a pretty good group of Latinos, Blacks, Asians. In percentages, probably Blacks were maybe 8-10%, something in that area. It's interesting if you fast forward to today. The only reason Samo High or Santa Monica schools have any reasonable number of African American students is because of free flow. You know what free flow is? I don't know how many parents are on the screen, but that means people from LA can go to schools in Santa Monica, and if they're people, I don't know what the policy of the board is now, but it used to be if you worked in town, your kids could go to local schools. You know. So it's tough.
Was Samo High the only high school in town at the time, or was it?
The only public high school. We had St. Monica's, of course, Uni High. I'm trying to. We did not have Pali High at that time. So that's the way it was.
And how about the middle school? You went to Lincoln Middle School, Lincoln Junior High, and there was another school.
John Adams was on the south side of town,
right?
And I think this goes to one of your questions. John Adams was inferior to Lincoln in the aspect of all assets,
right?
Because who went to John Adams?
I did that.
Well, yeah, no, I understand, but the point I'm getting at is you had most of the Latinos and Blacks going to John Adams also, and the Douglas workers.
And that's kind of what surprises me about what you said about. Now, I graduated from Samo High in '62, so I was a little bit behind you. But in my experience throughout school, that was elementary school. Kansas Avenue, which is now called Edison, and then John Adams. I always said we were south of the tracks, and then Samo High. But I had in a way, I had a little bit different experience than you did, because our group of friends included African Americans. We just said Black kids, Asians, and whites. Not so much Hispanics. But anyway, so I was kind of surprised about what you were saying about the segregated beach. I never knew about that.
Oh yeah, it's a big deal now, and we'll talk about it a little later. But the factual history.
Can I ask you a question?
Go ahead. You got a question? I don't see you on the screen.
I'm up here.
Go ahead.
Anyhow,
is that Kathy?
Jenny.
Go ahead.
Jenny.
Yeah. When you were talking about Santa Monica High School, and you talked about R.C. Owens.
Yes.
And he was the king of the dance?
Yes.
Was he able to dance with the queen?
No, that's the point I made.
Yeah.
Didn't happen. Didn't happen though, because the principal just said, no. We weren't going to allow it. The dance didn't happen, I don't believe.
No, I heard you say that, but I wasn't quite sure if then they.
No, they did not tolerate interracial dating and dancing and whatever. And I didn't look at the world that way. I'd bring friends of mine to my house, and my mom would get nervous as heck because they were white.
Oh.
And my mom's not prejudiced. Don't get me wrong. She just didn't want to get involved in that particular situation.
Because the consequences, I mean, you mentioned you getting arrested, and so the consequences for you and your family, not necessarily for the other kids that you'd bring around.
Oh, Pastor Tim, that arrest was awkward. we had gone, 3 of us had gone to Beverly Hills for a bar mitzvah. And we picked up 3 young ladies and wanted to show them Santa Monica. And we brought them back to the goody-goody. And then there's some of you may be old enough to remember there's a big fire tower, what used to be a big water tower on Berkeley. And it no longer stands, but there was the greatest place to park and look out over the city of Santa Monica and the ocean. It was perfect. And the curfew was 10 o'clock. I think we parked it's sort of ironic, like 10:02. And 10:03, there was a spotlight come through the back of the window of the car and it stopped on me. And the cop says, "What's he doing here?"
Wow.
And we all, 6 of us, went to jail.
Wow.
Fortunately, the males, all males, were released because of who they were. What I mean by that is my dad was and mom were PTA people, and they didn't stand for any crap. And the other guy dad was the vice mayor of the city, and the other guy owned a major department store in town. And so we got home, the girls' parents were in Palm Springs. So they had to stay overnight in jail.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. But fast forward to this. When I was sworn in as mayor in 1975, this is the beauty of storytelling. When I was sworn in as mayor in 1975, captain of police was in the audience, happened to be a friend. I didn't know he was going to play this game with me. He got permission from the mayor to come up, and I have something to give the new mayor. And it was my juvenile arrest record. He said, "You can burn it."
That's great.
I thought that was beautiful. Oh.
That was one of the first cases that I had when I was a young guy, just out. We got, I think that was pretty gutsy to go up there at the top of Franklin Hill to do that, because I had a case involving somebody in Pacific Palisades, and the Latino man, and he was up there with this girl up there, and they put him in jail for 3 days, and they thought that he made him show his green card. They thought the green card wasn't any good because it was an older issued card, but it was good. And they pulled him out of jail, and we sued on that for a civil rights case. That was one of the first civil rights cases that we ever did. And we won in Santa Monica. We won a few $1,000s. It wasn't a lot, but to go up there and do that at that time, that was pretty gutsy. I got that. That's a good. I'm
glad you didn't know my mom.
Indirectly, I think so.
Oh, yeah, you probably do. You know my brother, I know that. But
yeah, family, yeah, that's right. Your sisters, that's good. Okay, I just wanted to mention that. That was a good. It was in the city of Santa Monica. We did prevail in that case.
Yeah, no, we need lawyers like the Honorable Joe Deering.
Thank you for that advertising.
Well, no, I know. I worked here. By the way, let's fast forward. I was a police officer. Did you guys know that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So, I don't know. When you go into employment interview, you want to. I had 3 white guys at a table, and I was sitting on the opposite side of the table. And the person says, "What do you want to do when you get here? What's your goal? You're going to be a cop, but what do you want to do?" I said, "Someday I want to be chief of police." Didn't bat an eye. The guy says, lean toward me, and he said, no. You'll take Leroy's place. Well, I happen to have known Leroy because he was a member of my church. I also know Leroy didn't arrest any white people. He didn't police any white people because the Black and Latino officers all policed Blacks and Latinos.
Wow.
That's Santa Monica. That's answering some of your questions.
Yeah.
And so, guess what? You're looking at a guy on the screen who was Black. I don't have to tell you that. I wrote the first white person a ticket to any Black officer in the history of the city of Santa Monica.
Wow.
Judge Blair Gibbons had my picture on his wall in Chambers because of the amount of tickets that I wrote in town. Any of you remember Blair Gibbons?
I don't.
That's all right. He was a judge over right in the same courthouse. But I'm getting away from Pastor Tim's thing. You had some questions yourself, Pastor.
It's okay to go down rabbit trails. We do that pretty regularly. So yeah, feel free to move on to anything you want to talk about.
I'm comfortable. But let me go to the Santa Monica Police very short experience.
Could I ask a question though?
Now you're talking. Come on, Louise. Is it Louise?
Yes, I'm not originally from here, but I did job fairs at Santa Monica High School for the RAND Corporation.
I know RAND very well.
Well, this was in the 1990s.
Don Rice?
Don Rice, our good friend Don.
Yeah.
And, did you know Jim Thompson?
Sure. I knew them all. I was a very good friend of Rand.
Yeah. Well, I just talked. Darlene's a very close friend of mine, Jim's wife.
Yeah.
But when I did job fairs for Rand at Santa Monica High School, now this is like in the 1990s, and I was told by the students that it was a 2-track system in the 90s.
Yeah.
That it's you were either going to go to jail or you're going to Harvard.
Yeah.
That they had created a system there, and I haven't checked back recently, but that really saddened me that the students felt that. Have you kept touch?
Well, see that's you bring up a very touchy situation, because I've been questioned over the years. How come you devoted so much of your life to independent school creations and spent 46 of the 50 years at Crossroads on their board? I believe in education. And when I tell you the story about New Road School and what we decided in the bylaws of that school was that we'd have a reflective student body population that reflected the county of Los Angeles demographics. That's in the bylaws. We said every student will be collectively students, but they will all be, emphasis under all, individuals. And their individual needs will be met. So let's go back to Amanda Gorman briefly. K through 12 at New Road School. Harvard and out in less than 4 years. She's still 22 years old now with Harvard under her belt. Her sister, same age, cum laude, UCLA. Both went to New Roads. And I don't know, I think I shared with the pastor about there was a very defaced kid from Burns who, I'll never forget this. We were all worried about how he was going to be treated at New Roads. He was taken in like he was brought into a family. This kid turned around his life at New Road School and was a centerpiece for the Martin Luther King program at the SGI Auditorium at 525 Wilshire as a drummer. That's what New Road School is all about. One of our first graduates who graduated in a wheelchair and went to Berkeley, first in her family. Her parents were the gardeners for the school. You follow me? Mm-hmm. That's my life. That's what I believe in. Helping people.
So Nat, related to the question that Louis is asking, your investment in a school like that, was that because the public schools were not providing that type of equality?
Well, let me give you a Samo High story that I don't like to give, but because I'm an alum of Samo and been treated very well personally at Samo High. I was president of damn near every class all the way up to be student body president. From 10 but my point is, one day the guy who told the principal he shouldn't allow this dance to take place, I'm sitting in my class and all I can hear is rumble next door. So I excused myself like I was going to the bathroom. to my, so because the teacher's teaching, you don't want to be rude. So I just excused myself, did whatever the signal was. And I went over and opened the door, and there was a teacher sitting there with his feet on the desk. The room was full of blacks and Latinos, and they were just having a ball, and he's getting paid. And it was called, if anybody ever heard of such a thing, study hall. Now that was happening at Samohi. That's terrible. That's wrong. Huh? Or a place I love. And so I couldn't do anything about it other than tell somebody else and, see what happened. But that I just want to tell you, everything is not as you view it to be. And I have to be careful about certain things because I'm involved in so many things, and I don't like to say anything that's not true.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Belmar neighborhood in Santa Monica?
Of course,
and that's history?
All right. If you envision 4th and Pico Boulevard, that intersection, if you go in the 40s, the 30s and 40s, the beaches are segregated. All right. That area had homes, businesses, services for Black people and Black beachgoers and restaurants. The city wanted to build something called the Civic Auditorium. And so they condemned that entire corner from, if you go westbound on Pico, this is on the north side of the street where the Civic Auditorium sits today, all the way down to Main Street. The city's address is, there used to be a train track through there. I don't know anybody old enough to know that, but there was a train track through there. And so they condemned the property. Now, I knew some people that belonged to my church that lived there. And it was sad. And then what was really sad, because I have friends in the fire department, the police department, a guy from the fire department brought me some pictures and showed them to me. He said, Nat, well, you wouldn't believe this, but they gave us an assignment. He wasn't on the fire department at that time, but he found the pictures. He said, they gave us an assignment to go burn the houses down. And what we told the Outlook that we were doing fire training. Huh? Wow. Come on. So yes, we've had a tough time in Santa Monica. North Side properties. I did a double escrow myself on south of Pico. My wife and I bought a property on Hill Street, and we couldn't buy it because we went to check it. No, it's gone. So a couple of weeks later, I got somebody else to apply, and next thing you know, they said, we got it. I said, all right, let's get the lawyers together and let's sign over the title. That happened in Santa Monica.
Wow.
And when was that?
Oh God. I was on the police department, so that would peg it around the 50s, 60s. Yeah.
Wow.
So those things, our housing committee that we're putting together has to do with this Black Lives Matter, Black agenda in Santa Monica. You may have heard about it or read about it in the local throwaways, but since George Floyd and COVID-19 intersected, and what I mean by that is more Americans and more people around the world saw the 8 minutes and 34 seconds, 8 minutes and 46 seconds or whatever it was, knee on the neck. And the response was literally heartwarming for me, because I saw all over this country people protesting and multiracial groups, and they were peaceful protests about the injustice done to that particular man. Well, at the same time that was happening, as a result of that, cities and people started to have a reflection period. What are we doing that we need to change? Now, fast forward to your local city, because that's what you like to know about. Santa Monica created a Black agenda. The city of Santa Monica created a Black agenda program. They asked for volunteers to join a committee of 15 members. 100 people applied. I was lucky enough to be one of the 15. Our first item that we took under consideration was the police department. Now, having been a member of the police department, I made a number of suggestions internally to the police department and the union on how they should respond, not how what the final, but they should engage in this process is basically what I'm trying to tell you. And lo and behold, the Santa Monica City Council passed unanimously 7-0 the concept of this city having a civilian police oversight commission, passed unanimously. Just recently, they put out a notice for people who are interested in serving to put their applications in to the city council. They will appoint 11 people to this commission. This is one of the few, if not the first, in the United States of America. And it was done very civilly, very peacefully. There was no defund the police stuff and all of that screaming. And, reallocation is a different thing. I thought defund the police was one of the worst communication debacles that we'd had in a long time, because it allowed for a larger wedge. You're living in your homes, you got your kids playing. You don't want not to be able to get the police when you need them. You don't want not to feel like the police are there for you. Now, speaking of police, I'm going to make another, what do you call a rabbit hole? Is that? When I was a police officer, my style was what you would call today community policing. My wife will tell you this man talks and talks and talks. When I was driving a police car, and to give you an example, I'd be driving over in a predominantly Latino area. Kids are playing in the yard. I pull up my police car, roll the window down, and the car would be surrounded by kids. And we'd be talking. Next thing you know, I come down that same street about a week or two later, and some lady comes running out. Oh, when do you go to lunch? We want to have you over for lunch. Oh. No, those are true stories. That was my style. And so I became very popular all over the area. But I was also the first police officer to work north of Wilshire, Black police officer. And I had a case where on San Vicente, a woman was molested. And I happened to be riding with a female officer at the time. And we arrived. I'm the senior officer. And the lady, we came in, we were welcomed into her house, but she didn't want to talk to me. My partner simply said, ma'am, if you want to report this police incident, you will in fact talk to him, or we will not take a report. My partner said that. I didn't say a word. And so, but those kind of things happen. Huh? If you fast forward, I'm working by myself on downtown area where this is Korean War was, I think, going on about this time. And there was a base up the coast a bit where the officers, the servicemen would come down to Santa Monica to go to the bars. So what I did, I walked the beat by myself. I told every bar tender in the major places down there that I said, I want your bouncer to know who I am. I said, if you have a problem and you call me, I want to know that I have backup inside the house. while I'm in there, so I don't have to have your place overrun with police, because that's not good for your business. And believe it or not, I saved a woman's life one night, and how I did, she got cut across with a blade in Stella's Cafe on Broadway. I got her to the hospital, and then I saved the guy from being lynched. And what I mean, I use the term lynch, not hung up on a pole, but beaten to death, because they had him. The people in the restaurant were on him, and I went in and stopped that, arrested the guy, took him to jail, and a year later, so happens I'm still walking that same beat, and somebody says, "Officer," down the block near I can't think of the place now, but he walked up on me. Now, if he was angry with me, he could have killed me. He says, "I just want to thank you for that night. You saved my life after I lost my head and cut that woman." Huh? Now, to me, as I taught at the university, that's policing style. That's where the police officer is not seen as the enemy, even though the police officer can arrest you, literally can take your life in defense of someone else. But the police officer should be seen as your friend and your helper. And that's my philosophy. And I'm also a good guy at the clock. I got 9 more minutes. So I know those questions that you've been holding on to.
Yeah. Any other questions? Just go ahead and raise your hand or unmute yourself.
Nat, how many years were you on the police force?
11.
Santa Monica. 11.
11. Remarkable. And that also leads to, you're talking to a storyteller, that also leads to a story. I topped out on the sergeant's exam, got sergeant about 2 years after I was on the department, at least very fast. The guys and gals on the department loved me so much, they elected me president of the police union.
Whoa.
So I was president of the police union at that time, longer than anybody, 5 years. And one of the highlights of that little trip was, for about 3 weeks, I got them the highest pay in America. Okay. Now, I knew a guy named Edmund G. Pat Brown.
Oh.
and I'm serious. As a union guy, I met him. Been in his office, and I knew Jerry. Jerry appointed me to a couple of state commissions. But the point of getting at, I talked to Governor Brown about public employees need to have unions. And so right now you have, if you're a public employee, you have the right to meet and confer. That was called Myers-Milius Brown. It wasn't Governor Brown. It was another member of the California legislature by the name of Brown. And Governor Brown didn't get reelected. And I think, who followed him? Help me out, history.
Was that George? Deukmejian? No.
Anyway, we got the signature from, I think, Ronald Reagan.
Oh.
Yeah. I think Reagan signed the thing into law.
I've heard of that guy.
Huh?
I've heard of that guy.
Well, Reagan and I were good buddies too, because he and his wife, and they anyway, I knew them very well, but they were Palisades people, and anyway, good people. Santa Monica, he came in, and it was 20th in Arizona. Made a funeral home now. It's no longer a funeral home. Anyway, that's where they brought him. I went over and saluted, because I have the highest respect for the office of president. So
I heard when, sorry to interrupt.
No.
Maybe I heard this from you when I first arrived, or somewhere else, and I'm not sure, that the history of Highway 10 in Santa Monica and the impact on. I originally heard that the original plan was to run through like Beverly Hills and over
that's
here,
correct. That's
down,
correct.
Which
Pastor Tim, I had the maps. I had the maps in my possession where they came from the north, south to the less economic impact area. That's the decision they made. In other words, if you're buying you want to build an apartment building, and you start, well, I'll go over in Beverly Hills and build one. That the square foot dirt there is pretty expensive. So they kept moving down, and finally came up to where they knocked out in Santa Monica by cutting it where they cut it. They knocked out Japanese people, Latino people, and Black people. Now, I've also gave you something called the 3 T's earlier. And when I talk about this topic, I got to reinforce the notion that the money from eminent domain came in checks from the state of California to the property owners who lost their property. Now, Joe Deering knows my Kiwanian brother. He had a property on High Place, and he got his check from the state of California, and he purchased real estate elsewhere outside of Santa Monica. And that real estate that he purchased with that check is now 7-figure real estate. And I can name you, but I will not, families that lived in that area who bought substantially larger homes over in the area off Slauson and Ladera, in that area, beautiful homes. And they bought larger homes than they had when they were in Santa Monica with their checks. Now, you will hear how destructive that was to our city. Well, I'm an honest man. The tenants are the ones who got the shaft. They had no place to go. If they were renting or something like that, they were out on their,
Yeah.
But the people who got their checks and who had a brain were able to invest that check and do something that brought benefit to their family. And it's 3 minutes left on the clock. And that's my I-10. Oh, by the way, now I have one other I-10 footnote.
Yeah.
See, it's fun to chat with people. If you lived on Stewart Street, you know where the Kentucky Colonel is?
I know where Stewart.
Yes.
Okay, that's 28th and Stewart.
It's now a Starbucks.
Right.
I
They used to come out of the hole there with tons of dirt up and full roar to get out of the hole coming up. They're cutting I-10. So I had my motorcycle guys go down and we stopped the whole train. I said, if you don't get a flag person out here, I'm not going to let you take your dirt out. It was a safety issue. If you're driving down the street in your BMW or your whatever Beetle, and that truck came out full bore with 20 tons of dirt, you're smashed like a potato. And so that's the kind of cop I was. They got all their drivers together and they put flag people out and they did what I asked them to do. I didn't have to go to the chief or anybody else. We did it. So that's a freeway story. Now, you get a ring, and Laurel, you get a shot because there's 2 minutes left.
I know. I just want to know if you'll come back. I have so enjoyed this. Just really, because I'm a transplant. I haven't lived in Santa Monica for very long, and just to hear your stories and how different different circumstances arrive. With being a Black American in this city. I mean, I think it just gives so much more context to a lot of the anger we're seeing with Black Lives Matter. And I mean, I know we as a congregation all care about this very much, but we really, it helps kind of understanding your perspective and where you're coming from, and what you perceived as fair and what we perceive as the injustice that's been committed for so long. I just want you to come back. I want more people to hear your story.
I really appreciate that. That's the highest compliment you could give me. I love Santa Monica, and I hope you folks know that.
Yeah,
it's evident.
Yeah, I love this city, and
and I have a daughter who goes to Samo High, and I want her to hear the stories of what it was like before it's just
When
amazing.
she gets back on campus, tell her to go to the administration building and see if she can find my mug on the wall.
You bet. Absolutely.
I'm some kind of a distinguished alumni there, but no, that's whatever they did. But so,
hey, Jenny,
12 o'clock, you got it.
Jenny,
sir.
do you have a quick question?
I do. I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yep, go for it.
Okay. The situation currently is relating to the March last year. They're having a lot of problems with the police department and replacing the leaders, not the policemen. And I really like Santa Monica policemen. I'm just wondering, what do you think of this situation and how it should be handled?
The report is being made. We literally talked to the people who are working on the report, and they wanted to get some input from us, and we gave them some input. Let me say this. It was an awkward situation from day one. I personally got a call on the morning of the 31st of May from a captain on the Santa Monica Police Department who asked me if I would allow them to make a video of me asking the crowd to do it, be reasonable and da-di-da-di-da. I said, I'm pleased that you would ask me such a thing, but I'm also very practical. If I make a statement on a video, nobody can ask me a question. Nobody can say why. Nobody can do any interpreting of what I was trying to get done. I said, but here's my suggestion. Ask your chief and two senior officers, one perhaps African-American and the other Latino or female, to walk with you and tell the crowd, we'll come over to walk with you as you express your First Amendment constitutional rights, and we're proud to be here with you. That was my recommendation. Well, lo and behold, I never knew that my recommendation would be so that about across the country, those who did that had no problem. Because it was all in the news. But our people didn't. Why? The chief was not in town. They didn't want to tell me that.
Oh.
She was at her daughter's graduation.
Oh.
And she was placed in the most awkward situation that she'd ever been placed in her career. I happened to have personally sat on her oral board when she was applying for the job of chief of police. And she outranked a deputy chief from LAPD, a woman also, but she was very, very good and smooth on her entry. But she had one thing to do, and I'll close on this. She was going to be the incoming president, and she is now president of the International Association of Chiefs of Police, which is a worldwide organization. I'm a retired member of that organization. And she was in a bad spot. So I presume, and I don't, this is nothing that I know because I'm not on internal City Hall anymore. I presume she made a deal with the city to resign so that she could keep her presidency without being embarrassed. Because if I get the magazine, Chief of Police magazine, and her picture's in there, and her department is listed as Santa Monica. So she's gone, but the acting chief, Jackie Seabrooks, is superb, and she gets it. And so when the report comes out, you'll get all the information. The reason the report's taking so long, I think, may have some political footprints on it, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. I've seen that report, I think. I don't know if it's the same one you're talking about.
Yeah, it's a draft, Pat. It's a draft.
Yeah.
Yeah, they haven't closed it formally, but it's a draft. I got to see it, and I got to talk to the guy that's writing it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nat. We appreciate it. It's so helpful for us to know our stories and the history of our community. And there's obviously a lot of pieces to all of this. But one of the things that I heard, at least when it came to your style, that relationships are important, and that you can't wait till the crisis to start the relationships and to build those relationships. And so hopefully we as a church and individuals in a community can do that, or continue to do that here in Santa Monica, and be a part of hopefully making this continue to make this a better community.
Well, I'm honored to have been with you folks, and I respect you, and I love your congregation, because over the years I've had great relationships with your members. And I mentioned Bill Wood, and he and I were good Rotarian buddies together. And did you have the Bone family in your church?
Yes.
Yeah. See, John Bone and I were just like that.
He's a great guy.
We were such great friends, and so his sons and all are doing great work. And so I'm a Rotarian, folks. So I couldn't convince somebody over here called Pastor Vance to follow in.
Not yet.
I understand. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So
thank you so much.
Come back,
wonderful.
please.
Wonderful. Thank
you.
you.
Nat, your Friday parking space awaits you.
Oh, no, you didn't let the cat out of the bag, did you?
Shelley and I always say things will be normal when Nat's back.
Oh, thank you very much, folks. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, for showing up, too. Appreciate having you here.
Bye. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Have a good Sunday.
Bye.